Alistair Pringle. I work at the Equality and Human Rights Commission. I've been there for 10 years in many different guises. I'm sure most of you know who we are. In summary, we're Britain's equality body working to encourage equality and diversity to eliminate unlawful discrimination. And we're also an A status national human rights institution, and that gives us a special place in the UN system. We've got a whole range of levers at our disposal. Some are very formal legal powers, such as undertaking legal cases, judicial reviews, or investigations. And some are more about influencing change, shining the spotlight on issues through research, advising government on legislation, and the likes. And we tend to use these levers on key strategic issues. We had quite a bit more cash back in the day when Trevor was our boss, some £70 million. We now have 17. So we have to be really focused on the work that we do. We use these levers on key strategic issues of inequality and unfairness in Britain to catalyse change. So one of the key issues that these strategic issues that we work on is gender equality in the workplace. And I've heard a fair bit of that today in the short sessions I've managed to attend already. And as you know, very present in the press, women still find themselves disproportionately out of work in low-pay sectors, discriminated against, facing barriers to progression, which seems really quite extraordinary that this is happening in 21st century Britain. Now, the main focus for the bit presentation I want to do is on the Working Forward initiative. But before I do that, I just want to pick up on a couple of the other themes from what I've heard today and some of what Trevor said. Very current, relevant bits of work that we're about to launch into, one on pay gap enforcement and the second on sexual harassment in the workplace. So the first, gender pay gap enforcement, is one I know many of you will be directly interested in and connects very closely to the whole transparency agenda. There's been widespread interest in the approach that the Commission is going to take as the enforcer of gender pay gap legislation. So what we plan to do is very shortly consult on a draft enforcement policy, next few weeks I think, and it's going to make it clear that if you don't get your gender pay gap information up by April, we will look to take enforcement action using our statutory powers. Now, we did this north of the border, to be honest, on the public sector equality duty. There are a different set of legislation in Scotland, and it immediately got a whole lot of companies, public sector organisations publishing. So part of the intention of the threat of enforcement is to get some action. So just to be aware of that, and please do respond to the consultation. But most importantly, you shouldn't be afraid of publishing your pay gap information. You will have a pay gap. Everyone does. We do. EasyJet just published theirs. It was 50%. The important thing is actually what you do about it. So EasyJet, get some more women pilots. We're clear that publishing information on its own isn't enough to change things, that we all need to take action. So we're really keen to look at the activity side of things. It was great to be in the session next door in the Glass Pyramid. CMI Women also really keen to look at working together to look at what actions will achieve change. So your information in April will show a pay gap. The important thing is what you do about it. On sexual harassment, we're going to be writing to employers on Monday. We're going to be reminding them of their obligations. I think a lot of people are a bit unclear about what's allowed and what's not allowed. So we're going to set out some clear guidance on sexual discrimination guidance in relation to the Equality Act 2010. We're going to be asking employers what they're doing about it. And if you've got any good practice, tell us. But we're also going to be engaging with employees who've experienced sexual harassment in the workplace, saying what would have prevented it from happening, what would have helped you report it. Because unless people are reporting sexual harassment in the workplace and we understand what the barriers are, there's little we can do about it. So these are really important, very current issues that I know that will be close to all of your hearts in the work that you do. So working forward as quickly as I can, national initiative launched in September last year, calling on British business to make our workplaces the best they can around pregnancy for pregnant women and new mothers. The campaign is based on peer-to-peer influencing. So while many people think of us as kind of an enforcement agency, we also recognise that's not the only way to affect change. Peer-to-peer influencing has been shown to be much more powerful as a method in terms of behaviour change. We've got 9 founding members, large private sector employers such as John Lewis, Ford and BT. And they had really positive practice in this area. So we said, come on board, let's work together and let's share that practice and bring others on board to learn from you, but also to share their good practice. It's supported by a range of very influential membership bodies such as the CBI and the Institute of Directors. The ultimate ambition is to drive long-term attitudinal and behavioural change. Now, why did we want to get involved in this sort of work? Because it is a bit unusual for us, I have to say. It's part of our response to the findings of a big programme of research, and I'm sure you'll have seen all the headlines when this was published last year. We did it alongside the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills to look at the prevalence and nature of pregnancy discrimination and disadvantage in the workplace. Now, I've been in this field a long time, and I'm sure many of you have as well. And 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the EOC published information. And to be honest, there has been very little change and very little improvement in levels of pregnancy and maternity discrimination. The results of our work were based on interviews with 3,000 mothers and 3,000 businesses. And a bit like what I saw next door with the CMI Women in terms of encouraging women into management, there's a lot of support for this in business and employment, and a lot of encouragement, but the reality of the experience of pregnant women and new mothers does not match that ambition. What we found from our research was that 84% of employers believe supporting pregnant workers and those on maternity leave is good for their business. 4 out of 5 employers agreed that pregnant women are just as committed when they come back to work. And 2 out of 3 employers didn't believe that pregnancy put an additional financial burden on them. And even more so from those who just had pregnant women coming back, new mothers coming back into the workplace. So strong support. However, 77% of women had had one negative or potentially discriminatory experience because of their pregnancy or on the return to work. So that's the equivalent of about 390,000 women every year. We found that 1 in 9 left their jobs over discrimination, 1 in 5 were verbally abused, and 2 in 5 believed that health and safety concerns weren't being addressed. And another kind of stat I pulled out of the research, which kind of shocked me a bit as well, was that 10% of mothers said that employers discouraged them from attending antenatal appointments. There's a great deal of evidence as to why employers want to attract and retain working mothers. I'm not going to go over all that again. There's the competitive advantage. There's the wider economic advantage that we're hearing about next door in terms of the glass pyramid, which shows that if we take away all the barriers that exist, there'd be a significant contribution overall to the gross domestic product. So while our research identified significant concerns about levels of discrimination, we recognise that many employers needed us not just as a research provider, but also as a catalyst for change, not just as an enforcement threat. We needed to be joining the discussion, supporting employers, helping to identify solutions to these challenges. So by doing so, we're making our Working Forward community an inclusive, thought-provoking arena where businesses can engage without us taking multiple cases. I mean, you saw the level of discrimination there. We are not funded to undertake anything like that level of enforcement activity. So instead, we're looking at different ways to affect cultural change, picking up on Trevor's point. It's supported by the UK government, who believe that action on and around this area is going to enable employers to capitalise on all the talents of a diverse workforce. As well as ourselves, we've got this coalition of industry leaders. We all want to make our workplaces the best they can be. We've got this coalition of members to sign up to an MOU, and that sets out our expectations of them and their expectations of us. So our role is primarily to champion the initiative, co-create content. We've got some kind of really interesting conversation guides for managers. We've got a whole range of information up there. I see 1 or 2 smiles, so hopefully some of you have already used some of these guides. The Working Forward pledge and initiative has identified kind of 4 key areas which will help to realise benefits. The first, absolutely no surprises at all, we hear it everywhere we go, is leadership from the top of the organisation. That might be nominating a board-level representative to take responsibility for pregnancy, maternity, and return to work, and making sure everyone knows who it is. The second, making sure employees are confident, and it's really important that employees feel able to raise concerns. And one of the ways that you can do that is to be very explicit about what your policy is in your workplace, and make sure it's accessible, make sure you publicise issues around health and safety, which is a major concern for many pregnant women in the workplace. Set up a support network for working parents. The third area is around line management. And a lot of research has shown that line managers can get a bit nervous, not just about pregnancy and maternity, but about a range of issues around discrimination. Don't necessarily feel confident. You guys are in the best place to help them out. There's some excellent free training available from ACAS. And again, if you come on to the Working Forward initiative, you can get access to that free training. Finally, aligning your and aligned to kind of broader pay gap strategy work is promoting flexible working practice for everyone. Our members have been recruited from a range of in a range of ways. We've currently got 239 members, reaching 1.41 million employees. People have been recruited in a range of ways, including at national conferences like this. So just saying. Moving on as swiftly as I can, employers who sign up to the pledge, what do I get? And you can see there's a big sales pitch coming here now. Get access to our LinkedIn group, where you can discuss practical steps, further guidance, including these conversation guides I was just holding up in the air, exclusive events with founding members, and they can benefit from advice and guidance from expert supported organisations. But it also will then let your workers know, your employees know that you're committed to gender equality in the workplace. The team, the Working Forward team back at the ranch, are supporting our founding members to organise a range of events between now and the end of May. And here are some of those. They're all about sharing good practice and knowledge, developing further information and guides, practical hints and tips. So that's where we've got to so far with Working Forward, specifically on pregnancy and maternity discrimination. We're going to be evaluating the initiative in March. And while we started off simply looking at pregnancy and maternity discrimination, we've already been responsive to our members by increasing the scope to look at all parents, recognising that having a child impacts on both parents, so we're keen to look at how we can benefit there. We've had some great feedback, and we have seen some real change in practice. Arriva Rail, on the back of signing up to Working Forward, doing an internal survey to look at developing practice across the entire organisation. Page Group, looking at a buddying scheme for parents coming back from extended leave. So there's some really good, tangible practice that you can learn from and pick up from. So once we've formally evaluated all of this at the end of March, we are going to look at possible other avenues for the Working Forward initiative. And that might be looking at a range of other flexible work issues. So, to finish, if I've done my job properly, you're going to be sitting on the edge of your seats with your pen in hand saying, where do I sign? We welcome all employers from all sectors, no matter what the makeup of your workforce. You can join anonymously. You can publicise your involvement if you want to. You don't have to have pre-existing policies or practices, and did I mention it's free? Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair, very much.